Welcome back, everyone. So this is day 4 of my Israel trip. If you haven't checked out days 1 through 3, go do that first. But if you have, let's get into day 4. Hey y'all. So yeah, sorry about the weird camera angle, but the camera's still charging. The plug's way down here at the bottom of the wall. Yeah, I didn't make a, hey, this is what we're going to do today before we went to the Sea of Galilee and Capernaum and everything yesterday, because I woke up to find out that Mother Nature had visited, if you get my drift. So I was in pain, I was exhausted, and my mood was kind of up and down, and I'm like, I'm not in the mood to film anything right now. But today we are going to Dan and Hazor and the Golan Heights, and you'll learn more about what those are later. Oh, by the way, here's the new view from my new room. So on the way to our first stop, I chatted with Susan, who was curious about my autism since she believed people she knew might have it as well. I shared some Facebook posts I'd made in the past with her, and she told me this was an answer to prayer, that she'd been getting the feeling she should talk with me this trip, and I helped her get answers to questions she's had for years. It's just so amazing how God works. Our first stop was Hazor. This was a city the Israelites captured and was one of the cities that Joshua burned. At that time, Joshua turned back and captured Hazor and put its king to the sword. Everyone in it they put to the sword. They totally destroyed them, not sparing anyone that breathed, and he burned Hazor itself. During Solomon's time, he built a city on Hazor. Here's the account of the forced labor King Solomon conscripted to build the Lord's temple, his own palace, the terraces, the wall of Jerusalem, and Hazor, Megiddo, and Gezer. So yeah, this is the gate Solomon built, and you see that thick line of plaster near the bottom of the wall? Many excavations had that. It was to signify that everything below that line hadn't been touched. It was exactly how it was found. Everything above that was the archaeologists working to put together the stones found on the ground in that location in order to rebuild the wall as accurately as they could.
How you doing today, Courtney?
Good. These are the storehouses inside the gates. See the line in the wall? Look at how much underneath it was found intact. Hazor was pretty spread out due to their new method of excavations. When they would uncover a layer of civilization, they would take pictures, document it, and then would carefully move it to the side bit by bit so they would uncover what was underneath that. Hazor was first settled 3,000 years ago. During the Iron Age of Israel, it was the largest city in the country. During the Canaanite period, the Bronze Age, the upper and lower cities were occupied with around 15,000 people. After the city was destroyed by Joshua's army, the lower city wasn't used again. The Israelites rebuilt the upper tell with an estimated population of 1,500. This is the palace of the Canaanite kings of Hazor. It's made of mud bricks, which is why they built a shelter over it to protect it from the rain. This is the lower city, or the lower tell. Everything up here is the upper city. The lower tell has not been excavated yet. It's kind of cool though, looking at that and seeing how all these sites and excavations looked like before they started. Just think, all this used to look like that, buried and invisible. Wow, what history may be buried beneath our very feet? This is the water system dug by Ahab's engineers around 850 BC. In order to protect their water source from any enemies getting at it, because remember it only rains during the winter months, so they have to store water at that time so they have enough water to drink all year long, they enclosed the side of the hill that contained the water source. It was a little bit of a hike down and then up the stairs to get down there, but it was cool. Here's the original steps leading down to it. I mean, we're only halfway down and we're already so far down.
Is that the end?
And we've reached the bottom. It doesn't look like much, but just think, this is where people between 2,000 and 3,000 years ago came for their water. It's all dried up now. And it was so dark down there. This was another part of the city. Now, I didn't head over here, I didn't have time, but someone in our group did. So, thanks for the photos. Here's the citadel and high place of the city. Look at those steps. It's so amazing to find recognizable stuff still intact after 3,000 years. In the area of the citadel was the lookout tower. Our next stop was further north at Mount Hermon, but on our way we drove through Kiryat Shmona, one of the most shelled cities in Israel during World War II. So here's the Jordan River Valley leading up to Mount Hermon. And there is Mount Hermon. I know it's hard to see because it was a little hazy in the distance early in the morning, but I'll outline it for you. And we got our first look at the Jordan River as we passed over it.
No way. Kidding me. Holy cow.
Now, Moses didn't have to do that much work.
So I became the official bathroom problem child of the trip. You've already heard the bathroom on the boat story. Well, when we arrived at Mount Hermon, I really needed a bathroom. So I went to one of the group leaders, Sana. I wanted to ask a group leader so someone in charge would know where I had disappeared to and would also know the area to be able to point me towards a bathroom. She hurried past the group with me, telling Doyle and Jean as we passed that where we were headed. I hurried as quickly as I could, and then we went for where the group had gone. When we got close, a relative of Shane and Sana's that was going along with us, I'm sorry, I used to know her name and now I'm drawing a blank, maybe Joanna? I don't know. Started telling me I shouldn't have gone off like that. It was her job to be at the back of the group and make sure no one got left behind. She said I should have told her where I was going. I'm kind of like, but I told Sana, and then she told Doyle and Jean. I thought we were covered. No one told me that you needed to be told too. We then meet Shane as we join the group. He's also asking about where we were and why we didn't tell anyone. I thought I told the proper person. I thought this relative, Joanna, was just joining us for the trip. I didn't know she was in charge at all. Otherwise, I would have made sure she had known. Sorry, Joanna. I hope that's your name. Amnesia sucks. Now, Mount Hermon is located in Caesarea Philippi. What's so special about this place is found in Matthew 16. When Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say the Son of Man is?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." "But what about you?" he asks. "Who do you say I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." Jesus replied, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but by my Father in heaven. And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it." Now, this location at the base of Mount Hermon is called the Gates of Hades. This cave used to be so deep that they never found the bottom before it finally caved in. This cave was dedicated to Pan, fertility god of mountains and forests, around 200 BC. The ancient name of Caesarea Philippi was Panias, named after Pan. Later, Herod built a temple near the cave in honor of Augustus. After Herod's death, the territory was given to Philip. Philip founded a city here, which he named Caesarea. Since there was another Caesarea on the Mediterranean, he called his city Caesarea Philippi. It's located at the foot of one of the ridges of Mount Hermon. The rock cliff formed a backdrop to the town. From this cave emerged an underground river, soon becoming the Jordan River. It was on the flat area in front of this cliff that Pan was worshipped. The huge stream gushing from the cave would certainly have made the place appealing to Baal worshippers as an entrance to the underworld, since they believed he went there every year, causing the dry season. The Greeks who worshipped Pan believed the same thing. On the cliff face, niches have been carved for images of Pan, his nymphs, and the goddesses of the fertility cults. So the fact that Jesus was having this conversation in Caesarea Philippi, which was known for the gates of Hades, he could very well have been referring to this specific rock instead of Peter the rock, stating that he will build his church and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. Here we have Nick taking some advice from the group and taking pictures of the scripture involving this location so he can look back later and remember what the picture was of. This area is also known as Bania Springs. In the Arabic language there is no P, so they called it Banias instead of Panias. Here we have the tomb temple of the sacred goats. It's where bones of the sacrificial goats would be buried. Isn't it a great testament that all these false gods didn't last? That God is still around to this day? That it's his influence that has remained in the area till this day, not the pagan gods that were worshipped for a few centuries? Look at how beautiful this place is. By the way, that's Bill and Elizabeth. And here is the beginning of the Jordan River. It flows up from the cave where the gates of Hades is. It still flows up from underground even after the cave-in. We had lunch at a place that was in that national park. We had shawarma. And next to the patio where we ate was the Jordan River. We then broke up into two groups after lunch for two separate hikes. There was the easier, shorter hike, or the longer, harder hike. The longer hike got to basically hike a mountain to get out to the Bania Falls. The shorter hike went to the Palace of Agrippa II excavations and then rode the bus over to the Bania Falls. So I didn't get to see the Palace of Agrippa, but that's why we shared photos. And so begins our strenuous 90-minute hike through the national park towards the waterfall. It was tiring, sure, but I think what really hit most of us that chose this route was the fact that it was hot. The heat combined with the strain of the hike nearly did us in. But you gotta admit, it was a beautiful hike. I love hikes through areas like this because it feels like you're exploring. That's why I like doing cave tours too. You see what I mean by strenuous? There's Van and Janet. Now, we're pretty far north in Israel, so these are some of the last mountains before you hit Lebanon and Syria. It was kind of a up and down hike. That's also what made it so strenuous. Word to the wise, if you want to hike to Bania Falls, make sure you have prepared by walking a lot before the trip. It certainly helped me. We've made it! This is the Bania Falls. And here are the 4 church tech arts volunteers that came on the trip. Janet, Carlotta, Keith, and me. You see how red my face is? That's how hot it was. Doesn't this look kind of like Middle Earth? That is the fortress of Nimrod. It is the largest castle from the Middle Ages remaining in the region. It is named after Nimrod, who was a grandson of Noah and was described as a warrior large and mighty. When the Israelites saw the giants when they went to spy out the Promised Land, these people of Canaan were descendants of Ham and therefore related to Nimrod. It certainly explains these giants of Canaan who were large, mighty men, just like Nimrod. Our next stop was slightly more north, Dan. It was the northernmost point in Israel we could go on our trip. So far north, in fact, that we could see Lebanon and Syria from an outlook point. You'll see that later. And in those days, the tribe of the Danites was seeking a place of their own where they might settle, because they had not yet come into an inheritance among the tribes of Israel. So the Danites sent 5 of their leading men from Zorah and Eshtaol to spy out the land and explore it. So the 5 men left and came to Laish, where they saw that the people were living in safety, like the Sidonians, at peace and secure. And since their land lacked nothing, they were prosperous. The Danites rebuilt the city and settled there. They named it Dan after their ancestor Dan, who was born to Israel, though the city used to be called Laish. The Jordan River gets its name from Dan. Jordan means the fall of Dan. This is because God commanded the tribe of Dan to settle in the area of Gaza, but Dan chose to settle in an oasis instead of the desert area. Can you blame them? Look at this place. This was the first time I got truly emotional on the trip. We were kind of creek walking here, and I suddenly remembered how my dad loved to creek walk, and that hit me so suddenly how he was missing this. So this tree was named Winnie the Pooh's tree. It used to have a front to it, and you could crawl inside and stand in a hollowed out tree, but the front seems to have rotted off. Winnie the Pooh's tree. What a perfect place for a picture with the bear! Jeroboam thought to himself, the kingdom will now likely revert to the house of David. If these people go up to offer sacrifices at the temple of the Lord in Jerusalem, they will again give their allegiance to their lord, Rehoboam, king of Judah. They will kill me and return to King Rehoboam. After seeking advice, the king made 2 golden calves. He said to the people, "It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Here are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt." One he set up in Bethel, and the other in Dan. Can you believe this? We're sitting on a 3,000-year-old temple. Here is where they placed the golden calf to make sacrifices to it. The Canaanite people put symbols of their gods on the backs of calves or bulls. Jeroboam tried to combine this practice with the worship of Yahweh by using the statue of a calf, but not putting a god image on it. The calf worship Jeroboam established in Dan opened the door to Baal worship throughout Israel. Here's the high place where the temple stood. Here's that lookout I told you about. In the distance on the left is Lebanon, and the mountain on the right is the beginning of Syria. That road that runs across the bottom of the screen, it's so close to the border that civilians aren't allowed on it. And on the far left, where the flags are, is a trench dug into the ground. It's a Syrian trench that Israel captured during the Six-Day War in 1967. Here is a city where one half lies in Israel and the other half lies in Lebanon, so it's a big trade city. It's kind of like East and West Berlin, but without the wall. And again, here's Syria. Yep, you could walk through the trench and get into the bunker.
It's called that Bania. Yeah. With a hat, you don't see as much. You gotta really watch it. Watch it on the. Is there an exit over there?
Oh, is he in there? Yeah.
There wasn't really much left inside the bunker, but it was still cool. You hold the fort, Dad. We moved on from the temple and lookout area and headed over to the old Israelite city from the 9th century BC. This was the main street into the city before they built a new gate in a different area. I can't imagine having to trudge this every day, and in sandals. I was wearing expensive walking shoes and could barely keep my footing. You can see how they walled up this entrance after they built the new one. Here's the new city gate. It was customary in those days for the king to come sit at the city gate for the people to bring their requests and questions to him. Freddie and Ricky recreated it for us. Keith did too. Oh, and let's not forget Dad. This entrance isn't any better for walking on, in my opinion. We are so spoiled in this day and age to have paved roads and sidewalks. The four kings seized all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their food, then they went away. They also carried off Abram's nephew Lot and his possessions, since he was living in Sodom. When Abram heard that his relative had been taken captive, he called out the 318 trained men born in his household and went in pursuit as far as Dan. This next site is called the Abraham Gate because it's dated back to the time of Abraham. He might have passed through this gate at one point. This is 4,000 years old. It was the oldest thing we saw on our trip. It's made of mud bricks, so they built a canopy over it to protect it from the rain. Fun tidbit, someone in this group has been photoshopped into it because they were the photographer. Guess who? And here's our next bathroom problem. I could not make it back to the hotel. You see, you don't want to drink too much water in case you get stuck somewhere with no bathroom, but you need to drink enough water so you don't get dehydrated. It was a no-win scenario. So we've already been told that we'll be late to dinner, but someone goes up to say, I need a bathroom. And we make a stop and make us even more late for dinner. It was like having an embarrassing spotlight on me when I was the only one that got off the bus to the bathroom. And then we headed back to our hotel for the night. Now here's another bathroom problem story. This one wasn't my fault though. So because we got back so late, so usually we get back, we go up to our rooms, then we come down for dinner. But we were so late that we went straight down to dinner, and so of course everyone's using the bathroom that's down there, right across from the dining hall. Well, see, in Israel, their sewer systems and everything are so old that it can't handle too much stuff like toilet paper. So we were not allowed to flush toilet paper, and that was hard to get used to. It's like, I think there was maybe one time near the beginning that I forgot, but I think a lot of us forgot that night about that rule, because next thing you know, one of the waitress gals, it comes over to Doyle, whispers in his ear, and then Doyle stands up, gets everyone's attention, and goes, "I've been told to remind you that we cannot flush toilet paper. We have just clogged and overflowed the bathroom down here." I was like, that's what that smell is. Oh, those poor people thinking us stupid American tourists. Some of us went out afterwards to get dessert, kanafi. It's similar to gooey butter cake, but it's made of cheese with shredded wheat on top of it. And that's the end of day 4. Go check out day 5. See you soon.